Warning, this particular episode is going to be just jam-packed with thrilling mature content. We're talking all about scandalous historical events, complete with graphic descriptions to really titillate your senses. Listener discretion is advised. Please, won't somebody please think of the children? Fantastic news. Brace yourselves for the mind-blowing revelation that this episode might contain paid promotions. All hail this podcast, where history and capitalism make sweet, sweet love to bring you valuable knowledge, wrapped in the warm embrace of nihilism. Let's keep listening, at least it distracts us from the relentless void of existential despair.
Live from an undisclosed bunker, it's the Reasonably Priced Time Machine podcast, hosted by the ever-doomed Professor Ryan Lancaster. Also featuring the indifferent androids, Archie and Hildy, who add their talents to this futile endeavor.
Episode 72, From Rust to Reefer Madness.
Welcome, time travelers, to the Reasonably Priced Time Machine podcast, where history's skeletons aren't just in the closet, they're actively filing for bankruptcy. I'm Professor Lancaster, your pilot on this budget-conscious journey through time. Today, we're diving deep into Michigan's greatest hits.
Ah, yes, Michigan. Land of American dreams, where auto industries go to die, cities declare they are broke, and the water comes with extra flavor.
And don't forget the part where everyone finally decided to make marijuana legal. That'll fix it.
Please remain seated. The timeline turbulence is inevitable. Decline of the auto industry in Michigan.
Flint, Michigan, once sparkled like a freshly buffed hubcap in the spectacle of American industrial prowess, a dazzling testament to General Motors' alchemical magic. Imagine the early 20th century, when Flint boasted more chrome and steel than a Transformers convention. William C. Durant, the automotive virtuoso, set up his grand enterprise in Flint in 1908, and the city roared to life, humming with assembly line rhythms and dreams of chrome-plated futures. General Motors, under Durant's leadership, was the driving force behind Flint's industrial boom, establishing the city as a hub of automotive manufacturing. But as time hurtled forward, Flint strutted proudly as Michigan's second-largest city, flaunting nearly 200,000 residents riding high on the fumes of prosperity. However, the 1970s brought an unexpected pothole to Flint's joyride. The golden era of auto manufacturing crumbled faster than a subpar suspension system, and Flint's meteoric ascent screeched to a grinding halt. The trouble began with a seismic shift in the auto industry's gears. By the mid-1980s, General Motors was reaping record profits and basking in hubris, so much so that they decided to lay off thousands of Flint's diligent workers. It was as if GM had agreed to trade Flint's labor for cheaper markets in Mexico, leaving the city in economic disarray. Picture a once thriving metropolis witnessing its factories close faster than a clearance sale on Black Friday. Once a shining beacon of the working class, the city was chaotic. Factory jobs evaporated overnight like glittering confetti in a gale. The resulting job losses didn't just dim Flint's economic prospects, they turned them into a full-blown tragedy. With jobs vanishing, education became a distant dream. Schools shuttered, leaving Flint's youth with as much hope for a future as a snowball in July. The housing crisis was a real doozy. The market crashed and burned, leaving many Flint residents drowning in mortgages they couldn't afford. Bankruptcy and foreclosure weren't just problems, they became the new status quo. The fallout was brutal. Poverty soared, with a staggering 36% of Flint's residents living below the poverty line by 2009. Educational disparities became as glaring as neon lights in a blackout, with over half of Flint's children living in poverty. Violent crime rates spiked to such heights that Flint's reputation shifted from a city to a dystopian cautionary tale. However, amidst the wreckage and desolation, Flint's spirit endured with unwavering resilience. The city's determination shined brighter than ever. Initiatives to rejuvenate the downtown area, repurpose vacant spaces, and attract new businesses were akin to throwing a lifeline to a shipwrecked sailor. The community's spirit, though battered, remained unbroken. Why should we pay attention to Flint's turbulent past? Because it's a stark, unapologetic reminder of the consequences when an industrial titan collapses. Flint's narrative is both fragile and robust, serving as a warning for today's dynamic economic landscape. As industries transform and new economic realities emerge, Flint's story vividly mirrors the obstacles that other communities might confront. In conclusion, Flint's fall from industrial splendor to economic hardship isn't just a tragic episode, it's a crucial lesson. It underscores that the rise and fall of cities like Flint provide profound insights into the broader narrative of American industry. Understanding this history is not merely academic, it's a roadmap for navigating the bumpy terrain of our ever-evolving economic world.
The Detroit Bankruptcy.
In the Grand Theater of Municipal Melodrama, the curtain ascended on July 18, 2013, unveiling Detroit, Michigan, as it clutched its bankruptcy papers with the gravitas of a tragic hero's final monologue. With a debt mountain towering between $18 to $20 billion, an amount so colossal it might give Scrooge McDuck a moment's pause, Detroit's venture into Chapter 9 bankruptcy was not merely large, but the King Kong of fiscal catastrophes, a staggering event that shook the financial world. The Motor City, once a roaring lion of industrial prowess, had been limping through a prolonged decline. Its former glory evaporated like the exhaust fumes of its once thriving automobile industry. Picture 1950s Detroit, a bustling metropolis brimming with post-war optimism and home to 1.8 million residents. Fast forward to 2013, and the city's population had dwindled to a mere 700,000, a vanishing act attributed to deindustrialization, white flight, and housing policies that could have been plucked from a dystopian novel. Yet, amidst this decline, the spirit of Detroit remained unbroken, a testament to its resilience. Enter the Great Recession, an economic apocalypse crashing through Detroit like an uninvited guest at a black tie gala. Property values plummeted, tax revenues nosedived, and unemployment soared. It was a perfect storm of fiscal calamity, leaving city services gasping for breath while pension and healthcare obligations tightened their chokehold on the budget. In April 2012, the beleaguered Mayor Dave Bing and the City Council reached a deal with Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. The arrangement was increased state oversight in exchange for a financial lifeline. An economic review team was assembled in December 2012, tasked with the Herculean job of assessing Detroit's dire financial state. When deadlines were missed like high school homework, Kevin Orr was parachuted as the city's emergency financial manager, wielding powers that rendered him the economic equivalent of a tyrant. Yet, the crisis deepened. By June 2013, Detroit was defaulting on unsecured debts. Undeterred, Kevin Orr persuaded creditors to settle for a mere 10% on the dollar, a negotiation effort that could only be described as optimistically ambitious. When the bankruptcy filing hit on July 18, 2013, it resonated like a thunderclap across the financial world, setting the record for the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history. The causes were as varied. A shrinking tax base, unmanageable program costs, budget deficits, a record-keeping debacle that led to financial mismanagement, unpaid property taxes, and a corruption cocktail that tainted the city's financial practices. A hearing was set to determine the city's eligibility for this bankruptcy lifeline, and after a 9-day judicial marathon, Judge Stephen W. Rhodes gave Detroit the green light. But Detroit's bankruptcy saga did not conclude with a mere filing. Judge Rosemary Aquilina ruled that the bankruptcy violated the Michigan Constitution, a dramatic twist that saw Governor Snyder ordered to retract the filing. Appeals and federal stays turned the courtroom into a legal battlefield. Still, by December 2013, the bankruptcy court confirmed Detroit's eligibility, and the Michigan legislature rushed to pass a rescue package to stave off further turmoil. November 2014 saw Judge Rhodes giving the thumbs up to Detroit's adjustment plan, a blueprint for recovery as necessary as it was overdue. Creditors and insurers took a hit, absorbing $7 billion in losses, while creditors saw returns ranging from 14 to 75 cents on the dollar. It was a financial haircut, but it was a start. With bankruptcy now in the rearview mirror, Detroit embarked on a restoration tour to mend its economic wounds and revive its spirit. Plans emerged for a new arena for the Red Wings, and significant efforts were made to protect cultural treasures like the Detroit Institute of Arts, reassuring the public of the city's commitment to its heritage. It was, as they say, a long road to redemption. So, as Detroit continues to navigate its recovery, its Chapter 9 bankruptcy remains a landmark, a painful yet pivotal chapter in the city's tumultuous history. The city's saga is a blend of tragedy, comedy, and gritty determination, a reminder that even amidst monumental collapse, a flicker of hope for renewal and a brighter horizon endures.
The Flint water crisis.
In Flint, Michigan's decaying rust-speckled vestiges, an almost Shakespearean tale of misfortune and farce unfolded in 2014. A city once bursting with ambition and resilience now gagging on its toxic inheritance. The Flint water crisis wasn't merely a mistake, it was a grand grotesque display of mismanagement, systemic negligence, and environmental catastrophe. Welcome to the front row seats of a modern American tragedy. Flint's water travails didn't spring forth overnight. They were meticulously cultivated over decades of industrial neglect and economic decay. The Flint River, once a beacon of potential, had transformed into a vile and chemical-infested vein, hemorrhaging industrial ruins into the city's lifeblood. The collapse of the automotive industry in the 80s left Flint's economy as lonely as a ghost town, with its population shrinking faster than a wool sweater in a hot wash. Poverty soared, homes lay abandoned, the city, like a derelict sitcom set, was crumbling away. By 2011, as Flint's finances devolved into a mess, the city fell under the dominion of an emergency manager appointed by Governor Rick Snyder. Picture, if you will, a cost-cutting zealot deciding that the city's water would be safer, more economical, and oh so financially savvy if sourced from the notoriously contaminated Flint River. Thus, in 2013, this brilliant decision heralded a water crisis that would put the most ludicrous dystopian fiction to shame. The city's beleaguered residents quickly realized something was amiss. The water, more befitting a murky bog than a refreshing drink, was an immediate red flag. And what did the officials do? They minimized, deflected, and enacted a nothing-to-see-here performance. Meanwhile, Virginia Tech researchers and Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha, Flint's public health savior, began to unravel the grotesque truth. Lead levels in children were surging. The city's youth, those bright-eyed future citizens, were sacrificed on the altar of governmental incompetence. As if lead poisoning wasn't sufficient enough, Flint's water also hosted an unsavory array of other contaminants. Legionnaire's disease made an unwelcome debut, and fecal coliform bacteria joined the fray, turning the crisis into a full-blown environmental apocalypse. The city's deficient chlorine treatment concocted a sinister brew of cancer-causing chemicals. Were this a sitcom, it would be a black comedy, one where nervous laughter is accompanied by the grim awareness that the humor is as dark as the water. Faced with this bureaucratic debacle, its citizens emerged as underdog heroes. With grit and defiance that would make any David versus Goliath narrative seem mundane, they mobilized. They sued, protested, and held the government's feet to the fire. Their efforts allowed bottled water to flow like a desert oasis. Lead pipes were scheduled for replacement, and health programs were initiated. The aftermath was quite the spectacle. 15 individuals faced charges, though the grand prize, Rick Snyder himself, skipped away unscathed. Involuntary manslaughter charges were doled out like consolation prizes. The legal circus continued, leaving many wondering if justice would ever materialize. Flint's water crisis stands as a glaring exclamation mark in the annals of American history. It is a glaring reminder that even in a land of technological wonders and advanced infrastructure, something as fundamental as clean drinking water can be subjected to a comically negligent oversight. The crisis illuminated the crumbling facade of environmental justice and exposed the yawning chasm between the privileged and the marginalized. From Flint, we must extract lessons as harsh as they are crucial. Environmental justice must transcend mere rhetoric. Transparency and accountability must be holy. Our infrastructure, if it isn't up to snuff, will inevitably betray us. And regulations, like the lead and copper rule, need to be as ironclad as they are vigilant. The Flint water crisis isn't merely a somber chapter. It's an epic saga of neglect, injustice, and disaster that demands a sequel of reform and righteous change. May we all learn to evolve and ensure that our next water crisis remains firmly in the realm of fiction.
And now, a short commercial break and a word from our sponsors. Hey there, listeners. Are you tired of all the excitement, happiness, and purpose in your life?
Oh, absolutely. Life is just too darn meaningful these days.
Well, we have the solution for you. Introducing nothing. That's right, folks. Nothing is the answer to all those pesky questions like what's the point? And why bother?
Absolutely. Nothing brings you the unparalleled experience of emptiness, void, and complete lack of significance. It's like a black hole, but without the messiness of physics.
Imagine waking up every morning, looking around, and thinking, yes, another day of absolutely nothing. Just what I've always dreamed of.
And it's not just about doing nothing. Nothing offers you the opportunity to feel absolutely nothing, care about nothing, and achieve, well, nothing.
And the best part is, nothing comes with a lifetime guarantee. That's right, folks, a lifetime of pure, unadulterated emptiness.
But wait, there's more. Call within the next 10 seconds, and we'll throw in a bonus feature, existential crisis mode. You'll question the very fabric of reality, ponder your insignificance in the universe, and maybe even shed a tear or two.
So, if you're tired of striving, thriving, and all that jazz, call nothing now and embrace the sweet allure of nihilism.
Remember, folks, life is short, but with nothing, it's even shorter.
Disclaimer: nothing is not responsible for any increase in existential dread, lack of motivation, or overall sense of hopelessness. Use at your own risk.
And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Michigan versus the Environmental Protection Agency.
Envision, if you will, a courtroom spectacle of such magnitude that it rivals any dramatic saga, albeit one where the intrigue doesn't involve shadowy detectives or morally ambiguous heroes, but rather the meticulous hum of legal jargon and the pompous eloquence of robed justices. Enter Michigan versus the Environmental Protection Agency of 2015, a case that mirrors our age's penchant for labyrinthine logic as much as it does our capacity for judicial theatrics. Imagine the scene in the 1990s, a time of fervent legislative ambition, particularly with the Clean Air Act's amendments. This monumental undertaking was crafted to combat the noxious emissions from power plants with the noble aim of cleansing the air from their toxic plumes. In its profound wisdom, the Act entrusted the EPA with the Herculean task of regulating these dangers, hinging on its determination that such measures were appropriate and necessary, a phrase pregnant with potential, yet tantalizingly vague. Fast forward to 1998, when the EPA, in its bureaucratic ballet, decrees that regulating coal and oil-fired power plants is, indeed, appropriate and necessary. Cue the fanfare and let the regulatory choreography commence. Yet, as if in an absurd twist, by 2012, the EPA, continuing its waltz, decided to ignore the inconvenient truth of costs. Compliance costs were projected to be a staggering $9.6 billion annually, yet the EPA audaciously declared that costs should not be considered, an assertion that didn't pass without a few raised eyebrows. Now, let's turn to the Supreme Court, a veritable coliseum of judicial giants. Justice Antonin Scalia, the court's rhetorical powerhouse, thrust the EPA rationale into the spotlight. His argument being the EPA reasoning was as perplexing as a gourmet food truck in a fast food alley. Scalia contended that appropriate and necessary could not, in a meaningful sense, ignore the financial implications. Who would have thought that regulating pollution could come with such a staggering price tag? Like firing a cannon in a battle, Scalia's argument was unequivocal. Enormous costs cannot be imposed without acknowledging their scale. Meanwhile, Justice Clarence Thomas took the spotlight with his flair, advocating for re-evaluating the court's deference to agency interpretations. Thomas argued that the court should not automatically defer to an agency's interpretation of its own regulations, a principle known as Chevron deference. On the contrary, Justice Elena Kagan, the dissenting voice of reason, maintained that the EPA weighed costs and benefits. Her stance seemed to murmur, "Let's not forget the health benefits, they're somewhat significant." The Supreme Court's decision sparked reactions as polarized as a political rally. The EPA, undeterred, pledged to advance its regulations and cost-benefit analysis, like a regulatory bulldozer with a fresh coat of paint. Some hailed the ruling as a triumph for fiscal responsibility, while others saw it as a troubling disregard for public health, akin to discarding the baby with the bathwater. Ultimately, Michigan versus the EPA of 2015 is a chronicle of grand legal drama and stark contrasts. It highlights the tug-of-war between economic constraints and health imperatives, both forces vying with equal vigor. The case's outcome, which upheld the EPA authority to regulate power plant emissions despite the significant costs, has far-reaching implications for environmental policy and the balance between economic and health considerations. It's a testament to the precarious balancing act required in environmental regulation, reminiscent of a tightrope walking over a chasm of legislative dilemmas.
Marijuana legalization in Michigan.
November 6, 2018. Michigan, known for its automotive prowess and catchy rock music, decides to make history. With the stroke of the governor's pen and the resounding support of the people, Proposition 1 becomes law. Michigan becomes the pioneering Midwestern state to embrace recreational cannabis. This wasn't just a date on the calendar, it was the epicenter of a seismic shift in drug policy, a testament to Michigan's courage and forward-thinking spirit. The tale commenced a decade earlier, in 2008, when Michiganders, possibly left afloat by boundless optimism, passed a medical marijuana initiative. Enter the Marijuana Policy Project, galloping in like a chivalrous knight adorned in a tie-dye shirt. Their mission, to enable patients grappling with serious health issues to access some medicinal wizardry. Yet, the absence of clear guidelines for cannabis businesses left the state navigating a bureaucratic Bermuda Triangle, where regulations vanished and confusion reigned supreme. Fast forward to 2016. The legislature, sensing the need for intervention or at least a pretense of persistence, decided to address the medical marijuana quagmire. They passed a flurry of bills. Imagine them as legislative custodians tidying up the clutter, preparing the ground for what lay ahead. Then came 2018, the year Michigan unfurled Proposition 1 like a red carpet for cannabis. Michiganders could now legally possess up to 2.5 ounces of the verdant delight, cultivate a dozen plants in their basements, and partake in a new era of cannabis commerce. The state even added a touch of local autonomy, allowing municipalities to embrace or eschew the bud. From an economic standpoint, the benefits of legalization were significant. Taxes and licensing fees poured in, fueling everything from public services to social equity programs. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure chest in the backyard, only this treasure was green and carried a faint hint of skunk. This economic windfall is a promising sign of the potential of the cannabis industry. However, the journey was not without its challenges. Detroit, a resilient urban titan, found itself in legal battles as it strived to create a fair licensing system. These legal skirmishes turned the city's rollout into an ordeal, highlighting the difficulties of transforming an entire industry in the midst of legal complexities and courtroom drama. Meanwhile, the broader legal landscape revealed a tangled web. While recreational use was now permitted, employers retained the right to terminate employees for off-the-clock cannabis use. This created a persistent tension between personal freedom and workplace policies. Despite these obstacles, Michigan's cannabis legalization saga mirrors a larger narrative. It's a story of a nation grappling with its drug policy demons, recognizing the follies of prohibition and inching toward a more enlightened approach. The journey highlights the necessity for thoughtful, inclusive policies that address both the promise and pitfalls of legal cannabis. As Michigan blazes a trail through this new frontier, it's evident that the state's cannabis chapter is a vital component in the grand mosaic of U.S. drug policy. It's a wild, unpredictable ride that offers invaluable lessons in crafting a future where individual freedoms and societal benefits coexist harmoniously.
Conclusion: The Michigan Empire.
Envision the early days of Native American settlements in Michigan, a tranquil tableau of indigenous existence suddenly swept into the chaotic maelstrom of European exploration. It's as if a serene game of chess erupted into a heated game of dodgeball. The Proclamation of 1763, intended by French and British powers to keep settlers and Native Americans from playing a high-stakes game of territorial monopoly, was less peacekeeping and more let's pretend we're achieving something while making matters worse. It is a textbook case of well-meaning imperial foot-and-mouth syndrome. Then enter the European explorers who, with all the subtlety of a bull in a china shop, crashed into Michigan with grand visions of fur-trading empires. Their pursuit of beaver pelts was less about fashion and more about weaving Michigan into the global economic tapestry. Yet, while European economies thrived, Native American communities were sidelined, their traditional ways of life disrupted by the relentless march of so-called progress. Fast forward to the War of 1812, Michigan's moment in the geopolitical spotlight. This historical soap opera featured the United States and Britain as rival factions. With its strategic significance, Michigan became the stage for these epic battles, enduring turmoil that would shape its future. The war's aftermath was akin to rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, notable, yet far from a panacea for the continent's geopolitical woes. Enter the Industrial Revolution, and with it, Michigan's grand debut as a manufacturing titan. Ford and General Motors transformed the state into an industrial powerhouse, revolutionizing production like alchemists, transmuting lead into gold. But, as every great tale goes, with great power comes great responsibility, or, in this case, pollution and urban decay. The assembly lines that once symbolized the future became the face of labor disputes and environmental nightmares. Soon to the present, and Michigan's struggles mirror global issues, urban decay, racial tensions, and environmental dilemmas. The Mackinac Bridge, an engineering marvel, stands as a symbol of progress but also ushered in its problems, displacement, and cultural upheaval, illustrating that development often comes with a hefty price tag. We must delve into the broader historical narrative to grasp these twists and turns. The Proclamation of 1763, despite its noble intentions, failed to halt the encroachment on indigenous lands, demonstrating that good intentions often lead to more significant troubles. Similarly, Michigan's industrialization brought prosperity, but not without marginalizing specific communities. Modern historians are like detectives of old, piecing together the tangled saga of the past. As brave journalists and historians uncovered the Watergate scandal of the 1970s, so must we scrutinize power structures and historical narratives. And let's not forget Ronald Reagan, the Cold War's charismatic showman, whose presidency echoed historical patterns of imperial overreach. His rhetoric roared with the enthusiasm of a gladiator, but his policies often mirrored the repressive tactics of ancient empires. Understanding these dynamics gives us a compass to navigate current global strategies and their repercussions. Michigan's history is a grand, unpredictable show where each era plays its part in the epic drama of human experience. It guides balancing progress with preserving human dignity and offers insights into the broader conflicts between individual rights and societal well-being. Immerse yourself in this rich and multifaceted narrative, and you'll find that the past is not just a distant echo, but a vibrant and living part of our global story. Let's give a shout out to the fantastic team behind the scenes. Our executive producers, Ryan Lancaster and Ryan Lancaster, have been the driving force. Thanks to Ryan Lancaster, our sound engineer, for ensuring our voices sound their best. Ryan Lancaster's music composition adds that perfect touch to each episode. Our diligent research team, consisting of Ryan Lancaster and Ryan Lancaster, provides valuable insights. And a nod to Ryan Lancaster and Ryan Lancaster, handling all things marketing and promotion. Special thanks to our families and friends for their unwavering support and the entire creative community. And, of course, a massive shout out to our listeners. Your feedback keeps us motivated. We're proud to have recorded this episode at the Ryan Lancaster Studios, our creative hub. Remember, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Ryan Lancaster and our guests. Until next time, I'm Professor Ryan Lancaster, and this is the RPTM Podcast.
Congratulations, dear listeners. You've successfully navigated the baffling twists and turns of the Reasonably Priced Time Machine podcast. I'm sure you're thrilled to have spent your precious moments with us, pondering the intricacies of budget temporal travel. And hey, don't forget to check out the show notes on the groundbreaking website ryanglancaster.com, because what's better than reliving our discussions about reasonably priced flux capacitors and pocket-friendly wormholes? And while you're at it, why not grace us with your benevolent presence on the rating platforms of your choice? We're on the edge of our ergonomic, era-appropriate seats awaiting your judgment. After all, who wouldn't want to share their valuable opinions about a podcast that has tackled the most pressing issues of time travel on a budget? Time may be money, but listening to us, well, that's an investment you can't put a price on.